A couple weeks back, we predicted Big O, Olivia Vukosa, would be headed to Storrs. And as of Big East Media Day, 4 o'clock, she committed. And we're here to talk about it. Myself, Tee Baker, you're on the Hoops Gap.
Let's get it, let's get it, let's get it, let's get it, let's get it. Yeah. UConn, baby. Home of the champions. Let's go.
Welcome to the Hoops Gap Pod. I'm your host, Mark Zanetto. With me, as always, is Tee Baker of the Next, and of course, Big East Energy Network, Built to Ball. I'm going to get the Hoops Cap off of T's head there. It's like it was, although you could have a crown, that's fine.
Yes.
I do think, first off, housekeeping. Like, subscribe. Anything that we do on Big East Energy Network, please make sure you take a look at it. Check out bigenergymediapods.com for anything Big East basketball related. The Hoops Cap is here for you on all of your podcasts, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, the whole gamut. Like, subscribe, all of that. Big O, Olivia Vukosa. When we were in New York together, we talked about it during the media day, and I was tempted to ask a question to Gino, but I also kind of wanted to not be that guy. That's like she's like, is she coming? Is she? Come on, you could tell us. Spoil it for us. But that was done at like 2:30, 3 o'clock, and she announced at 4 p.m. Were you surprised at all?
I wasn't surprised. I think Olivia was in the top, and yeah, it was cool to be able to directly fist bump you when we found out.
That's right. Yep,
we were in person for the first time, but yeah, I think that it seemed like this was going to be the fit based on, reporting I had seen and just the fit that she would have with a program like UConn. Also wasn't surprised with the timing. I think there's, strategy behind not making this year's media day about next year's big recruit. So
yep, that's true.
They obviously knew the news and decided to announce it later on in the day, which I thought was really cool. Just another element of the media day that we got to experience.
Yeah, for sure. And, for those who are unfamiliar with Olivia, she's 6'4", from Christ the King in Queens. She's ranked 3rd nationally in her class. She chose UConn over LSU, Ohio State, Texas, and South Carolina. Christ the King has been a pipeline for UConn. Legends like Tina Charles and Sue Bird. Tell me about that pipeline and how that probably made a big, it was probably a big reason why she's going to be, wearing blue next year.
Yeah, I mean, longtime fans of UConn know that school. They know the legacy of Sue Bird and Tina Charles being local New York kids, playing in Queens at Christ the King. So UConn has always had that, in their recruiting pipeline. And obviously over time, you build relationships with these coaches, with people, alumni. So I think that always plays a part in selecting to go to a school. We see over the years, a lot of high schools, have sent multiple UConn players over classes because you're in that alumni network. You hear from people that went there and how that played out. But we know Christ the King creates elite talent. I love just like the Queens, Connecticut connection, just that New York connection, just that local recruiting. I've always really found that to be a really interesting element of UConn's recruiting, because New York basketball as a Northeasterner is just, the sort of pinnacle of what my understanding of where basketball was happening was like, it was like the New York and just basketball played in New York City always produced a lot of talent. So I love that pipeline, and I love that she chose UConn.
The broader story for me is her play. She is the reason why her nickname is Big O is not just because she's 6'4", maybe 6'5". Her play is Big O-esque, meaning 19 points a game, almost 18 rebounds, almost 6 blocks at 5.5 blocks a game. She's the New York Gatorade Player of the Year. She's really a force. I think what this is going to provide for Gino and his staff for the next couple of years is there's really no drop off anywhere. So whether she's starting, whether she's coming off the bench in her first year, she has the ability, similar to like a Sarah Strong, where she can play down low. She can actually shoot the rock a little bit from deep. So I think this is kind of an evolution because, we could talk about bigs that UConn has had for years, but like we're starting to see the evolution of what bigs are like starting to be like as time goes on in women's basketball, that not only are they post players, they can step out and shoot threes as well.
Yeah, and I think that reflects a broader trend in women's basketball becoming more positionless, becoming a style of play where someone who is 6'4" can handle the basketball, be at the point of attack, but also post up down low. So I think Sarah Strong is a really apt comparison. Although she's taller than Sarah Strong even, right? So similar skill set with an additional 2 or so inches of height. I think what I had to double take was that she was having almost 18 rebounds a game. You see big numbers in high school girls basketball, but to average 18 rebounds a game means that she's getting damn near every rebound that comes her way. You know what I mean? So it's just that dynamic inside outside two-way player that is defining the modern game, and UConn is well within that trend and figuring out those pieces in the long term that are going to continue to sustain that style of play.
I'm going to read some numbers to you, and this is kind of off the cuff, but it's also when Olivia is on campus, and this is without knowing whether they get Jersey Robinson or Addison Bjorn. They have who will be on campus for them. This is barring transfers, but I doubt it. UConn typically doesn't have a ton of transfers. Gandhi Malumamela is 6'6". Janelle Elfia is 6'5". Sarah Williams is 6'4". She won't be on the team. Sarah Strong is 6'2". Ice Brady 6'3". Blanca is 6'2". Morgan Shelley is 6'2". Ayanna Patterson 6'2". Ali Isabella 6 foot. And then you add Olivia Vukosa at 6'5". It'll easily be one of the tallest teams that UConn has had because right now they have probably the tallest team they've ever had, like just by the numbers and who's going to play. So I think it adds another trend in women in the larger women's college basketball game where women are evolving and becoming better athletes at the height that, when we talk about men's basketball, like you have a guy like Victor Wembanyama, who's like 7'5", handling the rock like he did last night. And people are saying he's like almost 7'7". You know what I mean? Like, so people are getting taller, but their skill set isn't diminishing as they get taller. They're not being put in a box of like, hey, you're a post player. But I'm going to ask you a question around that. One of the things that you and I have talked about, the difference between men's and women's basketball is the play it has to be a little bit, there's a little more freedom of being like a 3-level scorer, right? Versus in the NBA or even in college basketball on the men's side, people are chasing like the easy bucket. Like, the 3-pointer is more valuable than say a mid-range jump shot. You're looking for dunks, layups versus in 3-pointers, whereas those mid-range jump shots are kind of going away. And one of the things that I think basketball purists love about women's basketball is that there still is the mid-range merchants like Paige, like even like Diana Taurasi, as good of a 3-point shooter as she was, she had that game in her mix too. And I'm not trying to nail Caitlin Clark or anybody that's like that loves her. Like, this isn't about that. But I think one of the things that I love about the game is one of the reasons why I didn't think she would have worked at UConn is because she is that kind of like deep 3-point shooter, and UConn is kind of a different system. You know what I mean? Like they try to work on every aspect of the court versus one or the other. Does that make sense? Or am I just rambling?
No, I mean, I think that makes a ton of sense. And this is the type of stuff that I just, I love to follow the trajectory of how the game changes over time. And you see women's basketball, I think, entering this different type of era with style of play. I think, even Asia Wilson mentioned it about the Aces, is like that team has so many different combinations of players of different heights that can handle the ball, that can play inside, outside. Like to roster construction now requires that you have players who can kind of do a little bit of all of it. And if they're taller and more athletic, even better. So I think it absolutely reflects that broader trend of just like a positionless game. Growing up watching women's basketball, you would never see Rebecca Lobo handling the ball down the court. It was a post up back to the basket, which I love too. That's the thing. So that brings up that tension you identified, which like there's a part of me that really likes that, like really traditional post up back to the basket instead of the more like finesse transition spacing game. But there's space for all of it, I think. And what I think is really fascinating about a program like UConn is like they've been through every era with the same set of coaches who have seen that game evolve and who have evolved with it. And that's the piece that, like, when we talk about the legacy of Gino Auriemma and Chris Daly, it's a legacy of evolution, that they've been able to evolve their program in a way that matches the trends of the game and still land that elite talent that fits that new style of game.
No, I don't disagree, and I think what's interesting to me is like I just want the women's game to stay not to stay the same. I think it's always going to get better. Like, I think that, but I do think that there's something about having to be creative versus being one or the other that kind of stands it apart. And I don't want to lose that aspect of it. That's all.
Well, I think that, especially in Big East basketball, speaking to some of the coaches on media day, it's like there's so many programs in the Big East that have very specific types of offense they run that are based on read and react motion offense that are based on, like, we're not running a set play, we're running what's the best decision in this moment.
Right.
So you do create players who can really thrive in those types of systems when you teach them that different style of play. It's like not set plays, but when you're in this position, what are the 3 decisions you can make? How do you decide which one to make? And when we watch tape, like, let's talk about the different way you could have made that decision. But they're quick decisions, and it speeds up the pace of the game, which again reflects the talent. And also, she's a player who comes from Croatia, played on the national team, or is Croatian, of Croatian descent, like Nika Mule. And so, there's a lot of that, like, scrappy European style of basketball as well that Gino and his staff have really seamlessly integrated into the NCAA style of play as well.
For sure. All right, let's bring it back to Olivia. The reason why we're having, we're talking about her today is she's a foundational piece, for this 2026 class and beyond. First off, do you think that it gives them the momentum to potentially add a Jersey Robinson or Addison Bjorn? And then the second part of that question is, does Gino see this class all the way through, or does he hand off the Olivia Vukosa and whoever else joins them when his contract is done in a couple of years?
Well, to address the first piece there, like, I think absolutely it provides a leg up in recruiting. Whenever you get one piece, other pieces can begin to see their way within that structure, and so when you land a top 3 recruit, it certainly adds another element for those other top recruits to consider of, like, dang, I could be playing with her, And so I think that's certainly an element here. And then as far as, like, Gino is concerned, like, your guess is as good as mine, as good as anyone's who's going to comment on this video with their take about it. Like, a lot of people, predicted he would leave when Paige graduated, and it would have been his, moment in the sunshine. Then people were like, oh, but he loves AZ too much, so he's going to stay for her. And then people are like me are like, why would you leave when you have Sarah Strong? And now people are going to say, why would you leave when you, like, at some point the man's going to have to retire. And, it's never going to be about retiring because UConn is now bad. And I think that's what's, like, the really fascinating thing is, like, it's going to be a pretty nice handoff, I think, for whoever takes the gig, outside of never being able to live up to the legacy of the man before you, right? But having the foundational pieces, having an infrastructure to recruit new talent and have talent is going to be in place, I think, when he leaves, because they're going to keep landing top recruits.
No, it's a great point. And I do think, and you talked about a pre-show, it's like, it doesn't really matter how long his contract is. I think he could just say, hey, I'm just going to keep coaching until I don't want to anymore. And Dave Benedict and others aren't going to care. Yeah. And shout out Dave Benedict. We had a couple nice conversations. We had a few free moments at Big East Media Day. He's always gracious with his time. Definitely going to have him on the pod soon. I think if I was going to make a prediction, I think Gino, I think what's interesting is we had a really good interaction about the question that I posed to him was something that myself and Chelsea Sherrod were posing to each other in one of our last our shows last week, which was, is too many players a good problem to have? And as long as he continues to have these kind of stacked lineups, stacked teams of 14, 15 players that we all on the outside look at as really talented, to his point, it's typically, 8, 9, 10 players that end up playing. And then the reaction of the other 4 is whether or not you enjoy coaching for the rest of the year. I thought that was a really good answer, right?
Yeah.
So I think that will determine whether or not he sticks around for the remainder of, Olivia's 4 years, and whoever else they get, because I do think he sticks around all the way till Sarah is done with UConn, and then kind of makes a decision. Like that's my like final answer. Jeopardy final answer. Yes, that's my final answer.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm Gino, I'm definitely not leaving before Sarah Strong does. Like, to the ability to the opportunity that presents itself. He said it, last year when she was a freshman at Media Day, like she's going to significantly change the trajectory of the program, and we all kind of looked at him like, "What do you mean? The trajectory's always been pretty much up,
right.
And now you have Paige Beckers, and like last year's team was stacked too. But for him to say that and recognize that, even in the context of all that he's accomplished, to still understand, and you've had like coaches talk about how she might be the best player that ever plays at UConn when it's all said and done, and so that's an opportunity that's ahead of you with all these additional talented pieces like falling into place that I think you want to take advantage of, because you can just continue to shine your legacy really, and do something that no one else will ever do.
No, I don't disagree. And I also feel like too, the people that have talked about her being maybe the best player to ever play at UConn, myself included, are probably right. Like she's so different than the rest. And I know I know that when I say that, I'm going to get a million comments from people that have been watching women's basketball even longer than I have. People that have, remember the picture I showed you of Peggy Walsh and Gino? I didn't obviously get a chance to show him. Yeah. I also kind of didn't realize how many people are around Gino at all times at these media days. So like, that was a little naive of me. Like, hey, I want to show you a picture. but at the same time, like he's been around since the days of like nobody coming to these things, that they're not like televised on Peacock, that they're not streamed, and Storrs Central doesn't do a replay on YouTube, or UCTV doesn't do something with, and they have like a contingent of kids that want to be journalists. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I think he gets all that. So for him to say things like this is kind of where I go with this. It's not about hyperbole. I don't think that basketball is better now than it used to be. I think it's different. I think it's evolved. But I think Sarah's got she's got an old soul. She's been raised by a couple of players that played in an era that is not now. Like she's been raised by, Allison Feaster, and I forgive me, her dad's name is escaping me, but like both of them played professionally, and Allison is now an executive at the Celtics. When we had Brad Stevens do an interview with Roosevelt Jones on the Doghouse, he was effusive in the praise of Allison and such a big Sarah Strong fan. So she's got players, coaches, media alike fawning over her. And I thought she handled herself so well at Media Day, night and day. I asked her a question: is being more vocal about is that just an evolution? Is that about being year 2? Is that something like, how would you explain it? And she said it's a combination of both things. That her ability to kind of be a leader is about her, having a second year under her belt, feeling more comfortable with that. And Gino followed up and said, as long as when she says things, people just listen. Like that's just who she is. So he's got to stay for all of her the rest of her career, right? Like, I mean, like it would be weird if he retired before she graduated.
Yeah. I mean, if I were Gino, I probably would have left in 2016 after the 4P and be in Italy right now drinking wine. But that's just me. Like, I don't want to work till my very old age. But Gino's different. And at this rate, I probably will have to. But Gino is there because he wants to be there. He doesn't have to be there. He could, like I said, be on the Italian countryside having like prosciutto every morning. And
prosciutto's great, by the way.
He is instead still impacting the future of the game, which is really tremendous. And like when I think about Sarah Strong, I think that the comps that come to mind for me are Carrie Bascom and Maya Moore, 2 of the greatest players ever to play at UConn. And it was because of that versatile skill set. It was because of that quiet leadership. And just, Maya Moore maybe wasn't, loud, brash Diana Taurasi type or even Paige type that, you know, is all the personality. But every single day she came to work, and every single day she worked on her craft in a way that made others pay attention to her and made others respect her. And that's what I see in Sarah Strong. And that's a really special thing to see in someone who's that age. And you mentioned her father, Danny Strong, also played pro ball, played at NC State. Like, Sarah Strong played in a WNBA game already in her mother's womb, you know, like literally Allison Feaster was pregnant with Sarah Strong and she's playing in the WNBA. So
I love that. I love that when you bring that up.
Yeah. So like there's a level of, like you said, experience and expertise and old soulness that she has that is just really special to be around.
Before we go, I have to say, I heard this, and if anyone is in, you know, when you comment and like the show, please do so. Or if you think you think that I do a bad job and T should take over the show, please tell us, because that's been said a few times as well. And so no, but what I would love to say is that I heard that Olivia Vukosa's sisters are all basketball players. Not shocking, but the part that's interesting is that they're all very good and all going to be very tall. You know, the 6'4" to 6'7" range. If that's the case, Gino is basically handing over, like, you know, it's like when you know, when wealthy people hand over the estate. I forget if there's a show that my wife was watching where it's essentially like the richest people ever are just being like, which house do you want? Like, I'll hand over this portion. Let's sign over the estate to your brother, and then you'll have the boat. And, like, you know, they're divvying up the estate. It's like he's divvying up the estate to whoever it is that comes in and takes this job. Because if you have a pipeline through Christ the King, if you have a pipeline internationally, maybe, I mean, think about the strategic moves they've made recently, right?
Yeah.
You get the Sarah Strongs, which is in the Raleigh area. Then you still have that Christ the King pipeline. You're doing international recruiting. Canada didn't go your way with the Got McCord, but you're still in Toronto. You're thinking about you brought in the first South American recruit. Like, all of this is going to be very, very good for whomever takes over for the next head coach at UConn.
For sure. You know, you and I talked pre-show of just like, you know, it's not going to be a rebuild necessarily for someone who comes in. It's going to be a very hard job to take. It's like, how do you follow? You don't follow Gino Auriemma. And, you know, I think that's the challenge that we saw at a place like Tennessee, where for about 10 years, they struggled with that transition from Pat Summitt. They hired people who were in her tree, and now they've moved on to Kim Caldwell, but they're finding success because that foundation was laid and because the brand of Tennessee women's basketball has persisted. And I think that's what's going to happen with UConn. And like, they're going to leave in a position where there's likely going to be a pretty stacked roster for whoever takes that gig. So it's a pretty good starting point.
Before we go, I have to say, I think it would be interesting. I feel like I could see two scenarios to whoever it is. Let's just say, pick a name of, you think it's Carla Berube, maybe, that takes over. We'll just use her as an example.
Sure.
I could see a Coach Berube taking over for Gino with an incredibly stacked roster and doing one of two things: either going undefeated and winning the national championship, like in her first year, and then people would say stuff like, "See, it really wasn't all Gino. It's all just the pipeline of like players," right? Or the opposite: they struggle, they make the tournament, maybe they get Sweet 16, Elite 8, or whatever, and then go, "See, it's hard to replace Gino." You see what I'm saying? Like, it's kind of whoever takes over the job is in a lose-lose situation regardless. And so they're going to have to be, to your point, super secure. We've talked about this, I think, a long time ago, about how there's not very many people that are like this. The whole idea of you want to take over after the person comes in, after the legend. You don't want to be the person to replace the legend. But if you're replacing the legend, you likely are in that like top 1% of people who think you're as good as him or her, and can do the job. So that's the person they have to find, not the person that's kind of like timid, like, I don't know, it's going to be kind of tough to replace him. No, it's like, I can replace him. This is what I signed up for. Yeah. So that's what they have to nail. I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, but I think that's worth saying. Yeah,
well, I mean, what you're suggesting is someone crazy enough to take the job. Like, that's what it comes down to. And in that level of confidence, I mean, one thing when I spoke, Kelly Harper a couple years ago, who obviously took over after Holly Warlick, after Pat Summitt, I had an interview with her where, you know, I said, you know, what it was after one of her contract extensions. And I sort of brought up the idea of like, how does it feel to basically always be compared to Pat Summitt? And she said, you know, a long time ago, I decided that if I was going to compare myself to Pat Summitt, I will fail every time. You know, no one can be Pat Summitt. No one can be Gino Auriemma. You can maybe, you know, achieve similar success, but you have to do it your own way, and you have to be unafraid to do it your own way. And that's the thing. You can't just rely on tradition forever. You have to be willing to make those changes and make it your own to find that success. And the longer you try to stretch someone else's legacy, you know, the further you are away from creating your own. And I think that's what they learned at Tennessee, and that's what UConn's going to learn. But it's going to be, you know, potentially rocky, you know, for
Maybe
a couple of years, because that's a transition no matter what.
I think what's interesting to T is that and I guess this will be like the last thing we talk about is that, you know, it's one of those things where I think the mindset that you mentioned, like crazy enough to take over and have that kind of like maybe almost delusional confidence that you can replace, or, you know, replace is the wrong word, but essentially take over for Gino. But you also need the person that, even if they don't mean it, like when they're with the media, to say things like, you know what, I wouldn't be here without Gino Auriemma, you know, like that kind of thing, like that kind of deference to kind of get the fans on your side. And then also like behind the scenes, like, I don't care about Gino. Like, I love him. He's nice. Like, even if it's a former player of his, but I don't care about his legacy. I'm like your point, I'm making my own.
Yeah.
But in the media, then you kind of tell a different story. And honestly, I think that's going to be the gentle balance of whoever they bring in.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is. It's part of it. Part of it is media narrative. It's like the temptation to compare to what was, but what will never be again in any program in college basketball. And that's the thing. Like, that's, if I'm the AD of UConn, I'm saying, we're hiring you, but you will never be Gino Auriemma, because no one ever will be in the history of college basketball. No one will accomplish what he has.
And you know what the best thing about it is, I could see Dave Benedict saying that, because Dave Benedict is he's not going to pull any punches and be like, listen, we're not trying to find the next Gino Auriemma, because he or she doesn't exist.
Yep.
We're just trying to find someone to take over the program that has set the standard for years and continue it. That's it. And whatever that looks like in the future is what it looks like. It probably is never going to be, like you said, what it was.
Yeah.
So anyway, Olivia Vukosa, happy that she's here. Super excited about actually talking about basketball very soon. We actually will have real games, not just exhibitions. I don't know anything about whether or not the government is going to be available for us to go to Germany and play Louisville, or if we're going to be playing that in Kentucky. We'll find out soon, I guess. But stay tuned for that. And this has been another episode of the Hoops Cap. We're super excited about covering the team going forward this season. Check you next time.
Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Yeah. UConn, baby.